Hey, everybody, welcome to the I'm a Man, I'm 40 deep dive discussion of da 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 da, The Man with the Golden Gun. The Man with the Golden Gun is our 23rd favorite James Bond movie out of 25 James Bond movies. This is Roger Moore's second outing as James Bond. 1974, he takes on his second job as our favorite spy, 007, following 1973's Live and Let Die. They were cranking them out back then. And then it was about 3 years until they came around and did The Spy Who Loved Me. So the basic plot of this movie, the premise is that we're going to have James Bond get into a duel with a middle-aged Christopher Lee and his functionally useless golden gun. So he's already 52 years old when this movie comes out. I like Christopher Lee a lot. There is really nothing more to this plot. They try to work in some stuff about it. So Britain's going through an energy crisis at the time. So they start talking about stealing solar energy and selling it back to the Brits or just something. I mean, it's an excuse to have a solar-powered laser. And really the plot revolves around how can we get these two guys to have a duel on a beach in Thailand somewhere. So that's, to me, the premise of this movie, at least for the part I could stay awake during. Let's introduce my co-host today. I've got my brother, Paul Sykes. Paul, how's it going?
Doing pretty well. Can't wait to dive into The Man with the Golden Gun.
Oh, I can wait. I could wait a while. I really, honestly, I could probably go until the next century without having to review this movie. But before I do that, let's introduce my other fantastic co-host. This is Chris Banks. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to offer a very similar perspective to the other two white guys on the panel.
Excellent.
Yeah, this one to me, and we'll get into this in a sec, is only frustrating due to the fact that I know we all probably hate this movie, and I'd love to hear when people have different takes, but I know we're going to get to that. So, Paul? Why don't you start us out by telling us a little bit about what you thought of The Man with the Golden Gun?
Okay. I was really excited to get back into this movie. I hadn't seen it in quite some years, and I remember as a kid probably being a little bit bored with it, and I thought maybe with like an adult perspective, this movie would become a little bit more interesting. Nope, it sure doesn't. I think, and at the heart of this movie, I really like the concept. I really like this idea of a cat and mouse game between the world's best agent and the world's greatest assassin. I think there was the bones of a really good movie there. I think Christopher Lee elevates the material anytime he's on screen. I really like even the Hervé Village as his performance. I think that he's really fun as
Nick Nack.
Nick Nack, of course.
Monsieur.
Oh, Monsieur, I love that line. But man, for an hour and 20 minutes in the middle of this movie, it is boring as shit.
Yeah, you're not going to get any disagreement from me on that at present, but I'll turn it over to Banks and see if he has any dissenting view.
Okay, so I do dissent a little, and that I do find this film, every time I watch it, actually kind of fun. And in contrast to the Brosnans that we've been watching recently, the pacing is nice and refreshing. It's not overly filled with explosions and Uzis and stuff like that.
So you have time to cook your dinner without missing anything?
Possibly. Apparently this film nearly sunk the franchise. It was the second Roger Moore film, and it's one of the least financially successful of all the films. And so people say that the Spy Who Loved Me, the subsequent film to this, really kind of saved the franchise. And so that's not high praise for this movie nearly sinking one of the biggest franchises in film history. But I do think that there's some fun stuff here. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a great Bond film. It's still, I think I had it ranked number 20 or 21. But there is some fun things. You guys mentioned Christopher Lee, Nick Nack.
Nick Nack Tabasco.
But there is some really inexplicable stuff. For one thing, for some reason, out of all the characters from other films, they decided to return the illustrious J.W. Pepper from the
sure am, boy.
So for some reason, I don't know if this was a marketing ploy to get more Americans to watch this film, but J.W. Pepper has to be one of the most repulsive people ever put on celluloid.
One of the
Um,
producers really, really liked him and asked the writers, Mankiewicz and I want to say Maybaum, to work him into the script, and they obliged.
Right, and it's so flawless. I mean, you totally believe he would be in the exact location in Thailand that James Bond shows up in.
and he's like incredibly racist too, which is keeping in character for J.W. Pepper. But again,
Right.
it's like,
I had never
ooh,
heard the term pointy
racism
head.
as comedy, as comic relief, right? Like this guy's called. I can't even remember the name he calls the. I guess like
Pointy heads.
pointy
Pointy
heads.
heads. Because he uses it about 4 times.
Yeah, he does.
I didn't even know
And
that was a dude. What do Thai people have particularly? I don't understand the etymology of pointy head or how that is meant to be either
it's
insulting
deep
or.
racism when you've never even heard the term before.
So if you've never heard of it and it's not insulting, is it racist? I imagine they wanted to be more racist, but
Yeah.
they backed off a bit. They probably had some censorship issues. He is,
There's
yeah.
also the car scene where this kind of incredible 360 spin over a broken bridge in this car is kind of ruined with this slide whistle sound.
Kind
Which
of
is
ruined.
just
It's
inexplicable.
completely ruined by one of
Completely
the.
ruined.
One of the
Are
coolest
they still-
stunts that's ever been. The Top Gear guys tried to reproduce this stunt in the 2000s, and they could not do it.
Wow.
Yeah, they had to get a sophisticated 1974 computer modeling to actually, get the stunt guy to be able to do this. And I don't think they did it more than once, but it looks really cool, and it just takes all the wind out of the sails. It's just the beginning of this campy Roger Moore era that, it just gets
Imagine if when they landed that jump, they had hit the 007 theme full blast. Now that's how you score the scene.
totally. Bum, ba-da-dum, boom, boom, boom. It would have been amazing.
Right?
Yeah, no, they really blew that. They blew a lot of things in this movie, and I got to tell you, I've tried to watch this movie twice in the last 6 months, and both times I've fallen asleep about 40 minutes in. And so I did. I watched it last night. I fell asleep for a good hour, woke up, realized I hadn't missed anything, and still went back and I rewound it to watch, and nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, Maud Adams died. Okay, I missed that. I mean, I could have assumed that was going to happen, but that was about it. And it's just, I don't know why it's so hard to get through for me. I don't think the script is particularly punchy. I don't think the performances are. I do like Christopher Lee, but
Yeah.
boy, does Britt Eklund take you out of this movie.
There's an interesting trend in this era of Bond where I think each of at least the first 2 Roger Moore Bond films try to knock off another genre. So Live and Let Die is kind of like knocking off the blaxploitation films that were popular in the 70s. Man with a Golden Gun is trying to knock off like some kind of kung fu movie, and this is
Absolutely.
Remember, like shortly after Enter the Dragon was such a huge film, and that's a film that I really like. It's a hugely nostalgic film for me. But Roger Moore is not Bruce Lee.
No, absolutely not. Those fight sequences are terrible. And it's not the only influence they try to add in. I kept on thinking the opening sequence and the end sequence were kind of out of a horror movie. And I think they asked Christopher Lee if he had any props from his old horror movies to bring along with him, because it's a completely tonal shift from other James Bond films.
There's no tension at all in the opening, funhouse scene. I always thought it was hokey. That gangster couldn't be greasier. He looks like he's some terrible character actor from the 30s or something. That guy was in Diamonds Are Forever, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's the same guy who threw the Plenty O'Toole in the pool.
Oh, he's so sweaty. It grosses me out so much. And I think that's actually Roger Moore. If you look at him, because I was looking at all the fake guys in there, and I think most of them are real guys, like Al Capone's an actual guy. Because they didn't build wax dummies. And then I read online that maybe they built a wax dummy of Roger Moore, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't find that kind of thing. There at no point was I concerned that guy was not going to be killed by Scaramanga, and then at no point at the end of the movie was I in any way concerned for James Bond. It's twice we had to sit through like a 14-minute funhouse scene.
Yeah. Paul Sykes, I'm going to challenge your assertion that Diamonds Are Forever is the most 70s Bond film, because I think this might really be the most 70s of Bond films.
Okay. Maybe. I think in the Las Vegas setting gives Diamonds Are the edge, but I'm willing to entertain the idea that The Man with the Golden Gun is. And the kung fu scenes probably give it that 70s flavor too. And I'm going to say that about 30 minutes of this film, from the point where James Bond has to go to kung fu school. Then he escapes and he's picked up by Lieutenant Hip and his two young nieces. And then the two nieces, because they go to karate school, are able to kick the shit out of 30 guys.
They
And
defeat
then
the entire dojo.
Right, the entire dojo.
My favorite part of the film right there.
It's so totally all over the map. And then right after that, then Mr. Lieutenant Hip just drives off without James Bond. Did he think he was in the car, or was he leaving him there to die? And then what follows is the most boring boat chase ever put on screen. Not one shot are the two boats even in the same shot. Like it's like it's 30 kilometers behind. It's terrible.
Is that when James Bond pushes that little kid into the water?
Yeah.
That's one of the worst things that James Bond has ever done.
Right.
So horrible to this little whatever kid.
Yeah. Apparently Roger Moore was not happy about that because he was a big UNICEF.
He's just a big pacifist, yeah.
Yeah. And he was not happy about
Here
pushing that.
Drowning this little Thai boy in the river.
Just trying
I
to
love when they
buck.
make Roger Moore do things that he hates. He had to kick that guy off the car in For Your Eyes Only, and he really was upset about that.
Yeah.
I'm not a cold-blooded killer. Well...
But unlike in For Your Eyes Only, that was actually a good moment. This is questionable.
This is terrible.
It's really clear that the Roger Moore films, like, they hadn't found their groove yet. And I think you have to wait till the next film, and then they kind of strike a good balance of camp and and this movie was probably, is it the most campy Bond film? Like, it is borderline
Moonraker.
Yeah.
By a country mile.
Camp, yeah. I think it's got to be Moonraker.
No, I think this one wins. Moonraker's more like ridiculous and more fantastical and more science fiction like, but this one is just so close to a parody. This is J.W. Pepper, and with what's the female the main Goodnight? Mary
Goodnight.
Britt Eklund's character. Yeah. She's such a klutz. She's in the wrong film. She's in some kind of Mad Jack comedy.
Yeah.
Scaramanga is also an interesting villain. Like, he has this whole scene where he talks about how his elephant. You guys remember that part?
Yeah.
I watched it last night, but no.
Where someone killed his elephant, and then he killed the man who killed his elephant.
Is that what?
Here's my hot take on Scaramanga. This is during the oil crisis in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And Scaramanga is creating this giant solar power weapon. And what's his purpose with this weapon?
Yeah,
he blows up a cool float plane.
No, but is it to solve the energy crisis? Because if so, just let him continue. We can get off crude oil if we just let Scaramanga.
Scaramanga is,
sure.
I think he's a radical leftist eco-terrorist. He's doing this whole thing because somebody pissed him off when they tortured his elephant when he was a kid. And now he's going to take revenge on the Western world and destroy it with his solar power gun.
Yeah, maybe MI6 is in the pocket of BP oil.
I don't understand how this laser is an actual effective weapon, given that it's attached and situated in his lair on an island in the middle of the South China Sea. Right. How is he going to take that around? People have to pull up on the island and park in that one specific spot for him to be able to use that laser.
Right, because the curvature of the Earth is going to make that very impractical.
It's true. I will say the effects were pretty decent.
Unless he has Drax install a big mirror up in space where he can reflect the laser back down to Earth, right?
I wish they had kind of teed these up like an Avengers style, where they had been building up, for years, and they would reference this guy and that guy, and then it all kind of culminated in some really cool. But these things are so discontiguous, and I think Banks has alluded to the idea of continuity in these things as being laughable in the past. My favorite part, though, is obviously how easily James Bond can infiltrate High Fat's location with the mere addition of a superfluous papala.
Right. But this is another case, though, that his disguise doesn't matter at all.
It matters. What are you talking about? Guys. You're supposed to be like, oh, it's Scaramanga. Oh, Mr. Scaramanga. Oh,
But High Fat immediately, because Scaramanga's there, so no one is fooled for a minute.
That's when you know you're in for a great film, is when one of the main plot points is that a character has a third nipple.
Right. They had
Memory
They had Q working on the third nipple for months, right? And it didn't matter.
Can
It
we
didn't
talk
matter.
about Q and M in this film? Because Q and M in this film have devolved into insufferable, like the worst, most annoyed characters in the world.
Right.
All they do is criticize and badmouth Bond. Like I guess the writers just sort of phoned it in for this one for those two characters.
Yeah, you'd think you'd build up a little bit of credit by saving the world like 7 previous times, but I guess not.
Yeah. It's like, oh, but you destroyed this car, but you didn't save the world. I'm pissed off at you.
Please bring all of this high-tech spy field equipment back in one piece and in working. What is it for? What's this going to get used and destroyed, you dummy?
Right.
And M is particularly antagonistic towards him in this film, I found. He just seems so grumpy all the time with him. Right?
He does. I gotta say, I love the set where they meet though, in that ship that's on like a 3/4 slant. And
yeah,
that's cool.
Love the set.
It's actually
RMS Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, I researched that part, and apparently that ship had sunk. It was a British ship. It was used in the Second War, and it had been sold to a private company, and it was there was a fire on it, and so it was half submerged in Hong Kong between like 1973 and then it was kind of towed away in 74. So it was just there for that short period of time. So that's a kind of cool historical artifact left in the film with not many bright spots.
Absolutely.
No doubt, but in all practicality, why are you moving the entirety, like the commanding off, the M from MI6, the quartermaster, all the main people from MI6 are going to move down and live in this submerged boat? How much? Well, how much work is it going to take to retrofit that place to be an office?
Right.
And it was like a little slanty like this. Look at the boat; it's like this. And they have in the set. It was like at a little bit of whatever. It was a cool set. I also agree. I love the set. I thought it was fun. I think they dumped a ton of the movie's budget into that set. And I think I know the producers were just like, man, I really want to go to Thailand. So let's see what we can build around these cool islands.
Yeah.
Right. And the islands, I mean, the scenes are, at least that setting, I think is pretty fantastic. And Thailand at that time was not, every British gap year kid's destination of choice for the full moon party. So it was still, I think, an interesting insight into one of these exotic locations around the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. To get to that scene, though, why does Lieutenant Hip not tell James Bond, MI6 sent me? Isn't he risking certain death when these contacts always intercept Bond? Just relax, Mr. Bond. You're in good hands, right? Like, how does he know he's not really being abducted and murdered? This has happened where the bad guys abduct him.
I mean, it's best not to ask a lot of questions during these Roger Moore films.
Yeah, okay.
I think. What do you guys? I've mentioned. Let's talk about the gadgets in here. We talk about the third nipple. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think of that flying car?
I think that was the first draft. It could have been refined a little bit.
It looked like it was held up on strings. It was so
I think this kind of flying car is the beginning of a trend in James Bond. If you think about all the films that came before this one, can you think of anything that was quite as ridiculous as the flying car?
The jetpack.
He had a jetpack, I was going to say. And then he also has like a little mini helicopter, but that's a real thing. This stupid flying car does not fly in real life.
I mean, if you think about any of these gadgets, like the magnetic watch in Live and Let Die is ridiculous because it would rip your arm off if it came into contact with anything. It's got this magnetic field that can deflect a bullet. If you know anything about magnetism, it's as ridiculous as the flying car.
Yeah, I guess we can't really get into questioning the feasibility of any of the James Bond gadgets. There's not really much point. That shouldn't be what this is about. But that car, I know AMC paid them like a shit ton of money to get a couple of their cars into the film. And they get that one, the flying one, and they just so happen that J.W. Pepper, or who, I don't even know where they get that car. But they get a car and J.W. Pepper's in it. And it's also an AMC, I think it's a Hornet or something like that, to do the bridge flip or whatnot. So thanks, AMC, which is the American Motors Company, which has gone out of business a long time ago. This is the car that also brought us the Pacer and the Gremlin.
That's a good company.
I thought you were talking about the American Movie Channel.
No, see, the initialization AMC was available because the American Motor Company went out of business in the 80s. once they introduced the Gremlin as their flagship, as their flagship model.
Right. And then AMC has gone on to do much better work than the Gremlin. I'd much rather take Breaking Bad than the Gremlin.
I don't know. A vintage pacer from the late 70s. Woo! Look out, ladies. What was more offensive, the treatment of women, minorities, or little people in this film?
I'm going to go with women, and for just the scene that is kind of almost right out of Three's Company, but a little more risque, is the scene where he bangs Maud Adams while shoving Britt Eklund in the closet and tells her, "Don't worry, your time will come."
Can we also mention the fact that he, in order to get information out of her, slaps her around, and then it's about 25 seconds later they have sex.
Right.
It's a real quick transition there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really pulls a real life Connery on Maud Adams in this.
Yikes.
It's not pretty at all. Yeah, no, I noticed that. That really did stand out how he was abusing.
It's so out of it's even out of character. It's out of character for James Bond even, but it's for Roger Moore to have that scene. It's so not Roger Moore, and it just kind of sticks out as something like put in to be a little bit edgy, but kind of comes across as kind of gross. And I'm not even talking from a 2020 Me Too perspective. I'm saying like that was gross in 1974.
Absolutely. And I think, not that it makes it any better, but with Sean Connery, there was always this undercurrent of imminent violence, I think, into the way he moved, the way he talked, the way he dealt with people. And so when it happened, it wasn't quite as jarring as when Roger Moore does. But Roger Moore is so kind of innocuously, blandly handsome. He looks more like a tobacco rep than James Bond. So when he does it, it seems much more egregious.
And let's be honest, Maud Adams could have kicked his ass.
Probably.
Like, do you buy for 1 second that she's going to get like manhandled by Roger Moore?
Absolutely.
Maud Adams of Paul Sykes' favorite Bond movie,
Hey, we'll talk about that later, and you will realize how wrong you are.
One of the few repeat Bond girls. Of course,
I think she's the only repeat Bond girl, except unless you go to the most recent one.
Sylvia Trench comes back twice, technically.
Okay.
And then I kind of fall off the map there. Maud Adams also has a cameo in A View to a Kill.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She's in the background.
She's in the background somewhere, and I've never noticed it before. But one thing I
think
really like.
Grace Jones. Sorry.
What's that?
I think that was Grace Jones you're thinking of.
Oh, yeah, I conflate the two all the time. Grace Jones was actually going to appear in No Time to Die. The upcoming James Bond film coming out in November. But apparently it was written as more of a cameo than an actual character, and so Grace Jones decided that she was too cool for school. Like, she had signed to do the picture and then found out that what they were having her do was not really that interesting. So Grace Jones turned them down.
Wow. Yeah. Maybe she's off to bigger, better things that we just don't know about.
Oh, I would have liked to have seen a little Grace Jones in the upcoming film, but
sure.
Yeah, if I'll be happy if we ever see one. Go ahead.
Speaking of little, do you find Hervé Villechaize and the treatment of little people problematic in this film?
Well, I mean, little people or midgets, which is how he's referred to probably on 6 occasions. I've never killed a midget before, but there's I understand.
Yeah, the term midget was fine back then, I think.
How many uses of little people in film before, let's say, 1980 was not problematic? It pretty much all was.
Sure.
They were
Munchkins or Ewoks or...
I think, Ewoks is fine because you can't... there's an application to the reason that, like, they needed those small people to be in those costumes, but
right.
So much of it in Hollywood before that was just tokenism.
Sure.
And really just using a little person as an object of ridicule, right?
Yeah.
They played him for laughs a little bit here, but at least he has, like, a character.
I think I think he plays it well. He's menacing and a little bit kind of dubious toward where his true allegiance lies. Although I will say that it's incredibly impractical to have a 3-foot tall person as your manservant.
Yeah, it would take a lot longer to get things done in all probability. And the end scene, you talk about him being menacing, but the final scene where, and we see this a lot, where the henchman outlives the main villain, where he falls out of the ceiling, like you never get, Bond's just toying with him. You
Right.
never get the sense that Bond has any concern
Yeah.
whatsoever at any point in the movie that Nick Nack is going to take him out.
Right.
Remember, he
I
string
think
him
he
up
had
in
a
a burlap
sad
sack on
life.
the boat. What's that?
I think Hervé Villechaize. I remember in the '90s at some point seeing him on one of those talk shows. Those daytime talk shows like Geraldo or Donahue. One of those shows, and he was like, he looked terrible. He was an alcoholic. He was in like some abusive relationship, and I just felt sorry for this guy. I feel like so many people in Hollywood that were just kind of used for their immutable characteristics, like being tiny.
Right.
They just kind of used up by Hollywood and thrown out. And I remember he was one of those people. So it's hard to look back and see these roles and feel good about it.
Well, you really bummed me out there, Chris Banks.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is an entertainment thing that we're putting together.
Sure.
If you're going to come in every time and just drag it down like that, we're going to have to find a new co-host.
Fair.
A lot of the people in these movies are now dead, and it's sad. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I know he had a very sad life towards the end there, and yeah, it kind of blows. But hey, look, he got to go. This movie propels him to Fantasy Island, the role for which I assume he's probably most known. And then he's gone on to be portrayed by, obviously, Peter Dinklage later on in the sort of biopic of Hervé Villechaize, which I haven't seen, but I'm kind of curious to actually watch now.
Oh, that's a thing? I thought you were just making that up.
No. An
Okay.
HBO. There's an HBO movie. I think it's called My Dinner or My Conversation with Hervé or something like that. Starring Peter Dinklage as Hervé Villechaize. So.
Oh, Peter Dinklage is a great example of like how a little person today can have a role that isn't just a stereotype. That he's a very kind of ruthless, bright character in Game of Thrones, and like you said, like with Nick Nack, you're never really concerned about Nick Nack. He's kind of just this afterthought, and he's not really dangerous.
Right.
I thought he was a little bit dangerous when he's sitting behind holding a gun to him.
I think when he's in control of the computers, right, and you don't, or in control of the funhouse, and when you don't know, like you say, what's his allegiance? Is he actually helping Scaramanga? Like, I couldn't really remember if he was, or if he actually, if you kill him, all of this is mine. Like,
right?
Really?
Yeah.
Is that how that what's the word I'm looking for here? Is that how estate law works in the South China Sea for supervillains? Did he put Nick Nack in the will? I don't understand exactly. What the
Squatters'
legalities
rights,
of
maybe?
that are. Yeah, well, much like Nick Nack or Hervé Villechaize paved the way for little people to be taken seriously, Britt Ekland's horrible performance paved the way for Swedish people ultimately being taken seriously at some point in the future.
Okay, I will say Britt Ekland
performance from a Bond girl. Is there a worse performance?
I think she's my least favorite. She's
come
so
on.
horrible.
There's
so
many
useless.
worse. She's okay. I think her character is written as a ditz.
How is she an agent? She's fucking useless.
Right. I mean, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Okay, but is the material she's given, or is she just that bad? Because these lines aren't great. She's supposed to be this ditz, and I will say she crushes that bikini.
Everyone loves that bikini. I think Maud Adams is a lot more attractive than Britt Ekland. She's fine. She's my buddy Nathan's favorite James Bond girl.
I'm on Team Britt there.
Yeah.
Your guys are. Oh, Maud Adams has a far more sophisticated. I'd even go Chew Me over Goodnight. Sorry, that's terrible.
There is. You'll go ahead. Finish.
No. Go ahead.
There is one really creepy scene involving Britt Ekland. They seem to make out Scaramanga's guard to be a bit of a rapist. He gives her some leery looks, and I think they did that because when she knocks him into like the deep freeze and he freezes to death, so it wasn't such a cold-blooded move that like he deserved it because he was such a creep.
Right. No, he was gonna. Yeah, there was some sexual assault that was about to happen there by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I thought there was a bit of a resemblance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. What else do you guys have? Do you guys have anything else you have to say about The Man with the Golden Gun?
Uh,
As
don't
much as
think
I find
so.
these movies sleepy, I'll still probably watch it again at some point in my life. I don't think I'm going to watch it many more times, but I'll probably see it
Yeah.
again at some point in my life. I
Why
still
would
like
you-
these movies.
you fell asleep twice trying to watch in the last 6 months?
Yeah, it
You-
put me to bed. I had a great snooze.
Are we
for
just
someone who
trying
has
to
a
will
hard
ourselves to like these movies, though? Are we really? Is it really come to that?
No,
No.
we're pretty negative about them.
I was thinking about that when I was
Yeah.
watching The World Is Not Enough, and I
Yeah.
actually genuinely liked the character, and I felt more and more sympathy towards Pierce for what, and I know you guys' opinion on him, and I've always held the same opinion as well, and I never thought the movies were very good. I still think Tomorrow Never Dies is the worst one, but I don't know. I think these movies in general, and the Pierce ones included, will always hold a special place in my heart. Just like girls growing up watching Disney movies, I think there's still something in there that if you go back and look at some of those movies, they're horribly problematic and not great role models. And I'm not saying James Bond is a great role model, but I still found this movie entertaining to an extent, and I still find it fun to talk about.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back
Yeah,
and talk about The English Patient. What do you guys want to talk about? I'd rather do this than that.
Can I ask you a question though? Who are you recommending this movie to in this day and age? Because if you have like a young son and you want them to sit down and watch old James Bond movies, you better be prepared to tell them about rampant cocaine abuse, because these movies.
Why was this movie made, Daddy?
Yeah, right.
Cocaine, son. Cocaine.
Like, who are you telling to watch this?
You know what,
There's 1
there's-
minute left, so
Yeah.
we should wrap it up.
Okay.
My final take on this movie: the sinking ship in the harbor, an apt metaphor for this film.
I suppose so. Thankfully, this movie will be rectified when we get around to seeing The Spy Who Loved Me. Paul, parting words for The Man with the Golden Gun?
No, I think I like these movies less than you guys do, but I still appreciate certain elements of it. It's fun to rewatch them once in a while and talk shit about them.
Well, we appreciate your just showing up to, give us your takes on these things and endure the horror that is the early Moors. And we'll have a few more of those coming up very shortly. The next movie that we'll be covering here on I'm a Man, I'm 40 is going to be our 22nd most favorite James Bond movie, which is the aforementioned The World Is Not Enough, starring Pierce Brosnan. I'm looking forward to that one. I thought that movie was way better than you guys thought it was. So that's next for us on I'm a Man, I'm 40. Until the next time, I don't know, guys. I got nothing for you. I'll talk
Good
to you
night.
later. Good.
See what
Oh,
I
good
did there?
night. You should have capped it. Good night. Oh, nice.